Sinadoni. Oh, and Cunningham is down. My goodness. And this is the play that just occurred.
Looks like she tries to slide over right there, and Hartley just kind of falls and makes collision with that lower leg. You see her immediately grab it. And she went down hard and was clearly in a lot of pain.
One picture changed everything. Bria Hartley caught on camera with what fans are calling a sinister grin while Sophie Cunningham writhed in pain on the court has ignited the biggest controversy the WNBA has seen all season. What started as a routine second quarter possession turned into accusations of intentional targeting, family members calling out the league publicly, and demands for a suspension that could reshape how the WNBA handles player safety. The collision left Cunningham with a season-ending knee injury, but it was Hartley's reaction afterward that has the basketball world demanding answers. The moment everything went sideways happened so fast that most fans didn't realize what they were witnessing until the replays started rolling. Sophie Cunningham was defending when Bria Hartley drove hard toward the basket, pushing through traffic with the kind of aggressive play that defines Connecticut Sun basketball. But as Hartley's drive broke down, her momentum carried her directly into Cunningham's right knee, with a collision that immediately had trainers rushing onto the court. The impact was brutal. Cunningham's body didn't move the way it was supposed to, and the sound of the collision echoed through the arena loud enough that players on both benches winced. She immediately grabbed her knee, tried to sit up, then collapsed back down onto the hardwood in obvious agony. The way she clutched that knee told everyone watching that this wasn't just a minor bump or a player selling contact for a foul call. What made the scene even more disturbing was watching Cunningham try to get up on her own, only to immediately collapse again. The grimace on her face, the way she kept reaching for that knee, and the complete inability to put weight on her right leg painted a picture that nobody wanted to see. By the time she was helped off the court, leaning heavily on the shoulders of team personnel, everyone knew this wasn't something she'd be walking off. The collision itself might have been chalked up to one of those unfortunate basketball plays that happen in a physical league, but what came next turned speculation into outrage. As Cunningham was being helped to the locker room, cameras caught Bria Hartley's reaction, and that single image has become the most controversial photo in the WNBA this season. There she was, clear as day, with what looked like a smirk spread across her face while Sophie Cunningham limped away in obvious pain. The timing couldn't have been worse for Hartley's reputation. At the exact moment when any reasonable person would expect to see concern, or at least neutrality, the cameras captured what appeared to be satisfaction. That image, broadcast live and clipped within minutes, became the smoking gun that transformed this from an unfortunate accident into something much more sinister. Fans immediately seized on the photo, and it spread across social media like wildfire. To them, this wasn't just bad optics or an unfortunate camera angle. This looked like someone taking pleasure in another player's injury, and the timing made it impossible to explain away. The contrast was stark and damning. Cunningham in agony, Hartley apparently amused by the situation. The reaction was swift and brutal. Comment sections filled with accusations that Hartley had intentionally targeted Cunningham and was now celebrating the results. The phrase "dirty player" started trending alongside Hartley's name, and suddenly every controversial moment from her career was being dragged back into the spotlight. That smile became evidence in the court of public opinion, and the verdict wasn't looking good for the Connecticut Sun guard. Earlier this season, she was caught on camera yanking Angel Reese's hair during a rebound battle, sparking immediate chaos on both benches. The incident was so blatant that even Hartley's own teammates seemed embarrassed, while Reese nearly came to blows with half the Connecticut roster. When asked about it later, Hartley's defense was that Reese's hair was way too long and the whole thing was just an accident. The explanation satisfied nobody. When people saw Hartley smiling after Cunningham's injury, they didn't see it as an isolated incident. They connected it to that hair pulling, to the ejection against Allen, to every other moment where Hartley had pushed the envelope. Suddenly, the collision with Cunningham wasn't just an unfortunate accident. It was the latest chapter in a pattern of behavior that that fans and analysts were demanding the league address. The perception of Hartley as a repeat offender who plays without consequences became the foundation for everything that followed. When outlets started calling for a suspension, when fans demanded accountability, when analysts questioned whether the league was protecting its players, it all traced back to the belief that Hartley had been getting away with dirty play for too long. Sophie Cunningham, Sophie's sister, didn't mince words when she took to social media to blast what she saw as a failure by the WNBA to protect its players. Her post criticized the officiating and pointed out how the league consistently fines players for speaking out about inconsistent calls instead of actually fixing the problems. She specifically called out the fact that the collision wasn't even reviewed by officials, letting the game continue as if nothing significant had happened.
The family's public criticism carried extra weight because they weren't just random fans throwing accusations around on social media. These were people who had watched Sophie build her career, who understood the physical demands of professional basketball, and who could see the difference between normal contact and something that crossed the line. When they spoke out, it added legitimacy to the claims that this incident represented a broader problem with how the WNBA handles player safety. Their anger also highlighted something that many fans had been noticing throughout the season. Players like Caitlin Clark and other high-profile stars seemed to be absorbing more physical punishment than usual, often without appropriate responses from officials. The Cunningham family's criticism wasn't just about one play or one player. It was about a pattern of insufficient protection that was putting careers at risk. The injury to Sophie Cunningham couldn't have come at a worse time for the Indiana Fever. They were already playing without Caitlin Clark due to a family matter, while Ari McDonald and Sydney Colson had been ruled out for the season. Losing another key contributor left them with a rotation so thin that their playoff hopes looked ready to collapse entirely. Kelsey Mitchell decided she wasn't ready for the season to end. At halftime, she had managed just 4 points, giving no indication of what was about to unfold. Then in the second half, she went absolutely nuclear, putting together one of the most dominant individual performances in WNBA history. She scored 34 points after the break, finishing with 38 overall to tie her career high while shooting with ruthless efficiency. Every time the Fever needed a bucket to keep their season alive, Mitchell delivered. When Connecticut tried to put the game away, she answered with 3-pointers. When they double-teamed her, she found ways to score anyway. When they fouled her, she stepped to the line and knocked down 11 of 12 free throws. It was the kind of performance that legends are built on, carried out under pressure that would have crushed most players. The comeback wasn't just about Mitchell's scoring explosion. Aaliyah Boston controlled the paint with a double-double that included 14 points, 13 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals, and 2 blocks. Against Connecticut's bruising front line, her presence on the glass was critical, turning defensive stops into offensive opportunities and giving Mitchell the clean look she needed to keep firing. Odyssey Sims stepped up as the secondary creator with 19 points and 7 assists, orchestrating an offense that had every reason to fall apart but instead found a way to function at its highest level. With Clark and Cunningham both unavailable, Sims became the point guard Indiana needed, pushing tempo and keeping Connecticut off balance while Mitchell went to work.
The moment that sealed the comeback came from Lexi Hall, whose three-pointer in overtime might not jump off the stat sheet, but represented everything about this Indiana team's refusal to give up. When she rose up from the corner and knocked down that shot, it was the moment everyone in the building knew they were witnessing something special. A 21-point deficit had become the largest comeback in franchise history. By the time the final buzzer sounded, Indiana had completed not just a comeback, but a statement. They proved that even with bodies missing, even with their best players unavailable, even after watching a teammate get hurt in a controversial collision, they had something inside them that couldn't be broken. The 99-93 overtime victory became more than a win. It became evidence of character that would define their season. Inside the Fever's locker room, after the most improbable comeback in franchise history, the emotions were raw and real in a way that television cameras could never fully capture. Coach Stephanie White stood in front of her players, her voice heavy with pride and exhaustion, telling them that what they had just accomplished was about more than basketball. It was about proving that they would never be counted out no matter what obstacles were thrown in their way. The response from teammates who couldn't be there made the moment even more powerful. Caitlin Clark, despite dealing with family issues, managed to send a message that read simply, "Battled, battled, battled, so proud." Those few words carried more weight than any lengthy speech because they came from someone whose absence made the victory even more impressive. The locker room celebration wasn't just about the win itself, it was about validation of their identity as a group that stays together when everything falls apart. White called their resilience worth gold, and that phrasing captured why this night mattered beyond the standings. It proved that this team had something special, something that couldn't be broken by injuries, controversies, or seemingly impossible deficits. Even their humor became part of the healing process. Sydney Colson's joke on social media about being down to 4 players but we ball showed how they were using laughter as a way to process an exhausting night of extremes. The unity came in many forms. Serious words from White, pride from Clark and Cunningham, humor from Colson, but it all pointed to the same truth. They were stronger together than apart. The calls for Hartley's suspension aren't just coming from angry fans on social media. Analysts, former players, and basketball insiders are pointing to her history of incidents and arguing that the league needs to send a message before someone gets hurt, even worse. The hair-pulling incident with Angel Reese, the scuffles with other players, and now this collision with Cunningham have created a pattern that many believe demands intervention. The viral photo of Hartley smiling has become symbolic of something larger than just one player's poor judgment. To critics, it represents a culture where dirty play is tolerated as long as it doesn't cross certain arbitrary lines, where player safety takes a backseat to maintaining game flow, and where accountability only comes after public pressure forces the league's hand. The timing of Sophie Cunningham's injury makes the situation even more frustrating for those demanding change. She's now facing an MRI and potential season-ending surgery, while Hartley walks away from the incident without even a review from officials. The contrast in consequences highlights exactly what critics see as wrong with how the league handles these situations. The controversy has also reignited discussions about whether the WNBA does enough to protect its stars from targeted aggression, with players like Caitlin Clark and others absorbing unusual amounts of physical punishment throughout the season. The Cunningham incident feels like the culmination of a pattern that many believe needs to be addressed before it gets worse. The image of Bria Hartley smiling while Cunningham suffered has become a symbol of everything critics see as wrong with how the WNBA handles these situations. Whether that's fair to Hartley individually or represents a broader systemic problem depends on your perspective, but the conversation it has started isn't going away anytime soon. For the Indiana Fever, they've proven that adversity can reveal character in ways that success never could. Their franchise record comeback in the face of mounting injuries and controversy showed a resilience that will define them regardless of what happens in the playoffs. Kelsey Mitchell's 38-point explosion, Aaliyah Boston's dominant paint presence, and the collective refusal to give up created a moment that transcends basketball.
Sophie Cunningham's status remains uncertain pending her MRI results, but her teammates have shown they'll continue fighting in her honor. The family's public criticism of the league and calls for better player protection have added their voices to a growing chorus demanding change. Whether the WNBA responds with meaningful action or continues business as usual will determine how this controversy is ultimately remembered. The broader implications reach every corner of the league. Players are watching to see if the WNBA will prioritize their safety over maintaining game flow. Fans are demanding accountability for dangerous play that goes unpunished. Officials are under scrutiny for missing calls that put careers at risk. The pressure for systemic change has never been greater. What happened in Connecticut was more than just another controversial call or unfortunate injury. It was a moment that exposed the gap between the WNBA's stated commitment to player safety and the reality of how these situations are actually handled. The league's response in the coming days will send a message about their priorities that resonates far beyond this single incident. The conversation about Bria Hartley's pattern of behavior, the adequacy of official oversight, and the protection of star players isn't ending with this game. It's just beginning, and how the WNBA navigates these waters will shape the league's reputation for years to come. The stakes couldn't be higher, and everyone is watching to see what happens next.